गुड मॉर्निंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। इंडिया एंड चाइना, राइट? Are we going to be in a state of armed coexistence, or are we moving towards armed friction? That is the question which I'm going to analyze today. And it's a very important issue to analyze given the nature of our relations, and they're not improving. In fact, it's the other way around, and the state of affairs in the world. Let's look at, I'll start with something very fundamental. What's been the trajectory of relations between India and China? Pre 52, we were in the state of a peaceful coexistence. In fact, I would say mutual ignorance. Pre 50s, after independence, till China got into Tibet, right? And from then to about 62, we were in our own world. I don't know how to describe it. But from then onwards, we've been in three states, and we've been always seeking this business of peaceful coexistence, but we're not there. We are at this point of time in a state of armed coexistence. So peaceful is turned to armed. Why armed? Because the bulk of our forces are still deployed there. We have just disengaged, right? We have not de-inducted or all that. The major part has not happened. Armed forces are still there. Both the armies are still facing, I wouldn't say face off, but they're still deployed across the LAC. To get back to a state of friction or armed confrontation, we never know how things will move. Leave everything else apart. So from 2020, we are in a state of armed coexistence. But in between, we've been going into a state of armed friction and coming out of it. Armed friction to down to armed coexistence. Whether it's in 2020 Eastern Ladakh and Kailash Range operations, right? One might say, no, arms were not used in the confrontations or in the friction which happened, but the arms were deployed. The weapons were deployed. Armies were completely mobilized. Air forces were ready. Go back to Doklam, 2017, same state in the Northeastern Command. Or for that matter, in Yangtze, which I have not highlighted here, we had actual fist-to-fist engagements, a lot of casualties in China, or the Chinese side. And then you go back to 1987, again, Sunrangchu. Both armies had been mobilized at that point of time. And so it was a friction, completely armed, completely deployed. And of course, we've had two actual confrontations. When I say confrontations, fights, 62, where we ended up on the wrong side of the stick, and 67 at Natula, Sikkim, we gave the Chinese a bloody nose. Interestingly, the Chinese don't talk of Natula in any of their histories. This is a feature of the Chinese. Whenever they get a bloody nose, they don't talk of it. It happened in Vietnam also. Every other place, they are the victors. But these are the four states. From armed coexistence, we thought, Kazan last year, when our Prime Minister and Xi Jinping met, the effort on both sides was, can we go into peaceful coexistence from armed coexistence? But things which are happening don't suggest so. Then the question which needs to be answered or examined is, are we going back towards armed friction, which can escalate into armed confrontations? This is the thing, this trajectory, the relationship will swing along this trajectory. And it is in this context I'd like to put across a few issues and examine how things are happening. Okay, the issues which are affecting our relationship, and someone has to understand this very well, are these which I put out. The first is relative geoeconomics. There's no doubt that China is a huge economy, much bigger economy than India. On that, there's no doubt at all. But the Indian economy is not small anymore. That's the first part. The second part is the Indian economy is the fastest growing economy, whereas the Chinese economy is struggling. So, if this is the realism, the relative geoeconomics of both economies are in opposite directions. Ours going up, there's probably coming down, and I mean, definitely this is on a decline. This induces friction, right? There's increasing confidence on our side, and there's an upward pressure being put on China. And China is putting a downward pressure to cap our economy. This is well known. We've examined it earlier. Then there's an issue of political stability versus instability. India is in a state of absolute political stability with a strong government and which is looking forward. Confident, wanted by the world for many issues. Right. On the other hand, we all know that there is instability internally in China. Every second day, everyone talks of, a replacement for Xi Jinping and all that, but we don't know that whether that's right or wrong. But the fact is that there are a lot of purges, and the very fact that so many purges are happening indicates insecurity within the Chinese system. So you have a system which is stable, the other system is unstable. Then there is global uncertainty. We are now, while our Prime Minister says we are not in the era of war, but wars are happening. Whether it's in Russia, Ukraine, which is continuing, and China comes out and says we don't want Russia to lose, so there is issue. Israel, Gaza, Iran, Syria, this whole area is in turmoil, and it is not receded, right? And the way China has been perceived to have, reacted or acted vis-a-vis India has its own dynamics. The South China Sea, where China is in a running fight with Philippines, Taiwan, and everyone there, all the countries which claim, sovereignty over a few pieces of land there, islands. Then there are the Trump tariffs, which are having its own effect globally, but more so on China. And this is something which I will, analyze separately because it needs a separate analysis. But the fundamental thing is that Trump tariffs are affecting everyone. I mean, it's again a dichotomy. There's a big difference between the way China and USA are going about their business and their agreements, because they only reached a framework agreement to take their, entire thing forward. Whereas India is on the cusp of signing a FTA. Obsindur. Obsindur has changed our equations completely. One of the major things is India is no more reactive. Pakistan and China always felt that, look, India is a reactive nation. It will not be proactive. It will not do whatever it takes to confront both of them. But that has changed. That's changed like nobody. In fact, prior to Obsindur, the commentary in China was that, look, Pakistan has modern Chinese weapons. India has ancient weapon systems. What can India do? The victory is Pakistan's, but that has out. We know what happened, and China feels slighted. And I'll talk about it a little later. Then there's the issue of Dalai Lama reincarnation, which has been ignited. When I say ignited, it was always there. It just resurfaced and caught a bigger fire. And then both nations seek stability. Both nations know that, India and China both know that we cannot handle an unreliable USA on our own. There are talks here and there of RIC and better relations between India and China. China wants India on its side, uh, to confront USA, and India doesn't want China on its back in its own development. Various views to this. All these factors weigh in on India-China relations, right? But both of us know it. But yet, the way things are happening, you examine them, things are not going in the right direction. They're not towards peace. Definitely not towards peace. That's the point. Right. The first issue, the Quad. The first point of difference, and China is very upset by this whole story, is the Quad. And why Quad? Because in the Quad statement, there was specific mention of East China Sea and South China Sea and Chinese actions in that. And the verbiage in that was something which was not there before. It was just not there before. A couple of sentences in that pointed fingers at China. Right? Unilateral actions seeking change in the status quo by force or coercion was always there. Right? Issues which came up, dangerous and provocative actions, the verbiage, interference with offshore resource development, all these have come up now, and it upsets China. Repeated obstruction of the freedom of navigation and overflight, dangerous maneuvers by military aircraft, all this, and the maritime militia, the way they behave, unsafe use of water cannons, or ramming or blocking actions in South China Sea. All these have been highlighted in the Quad statement and said this is destabilizing the area. And the finger has been pointed at China. And India is a signatory to this statement. It's a joint statement. Virtually for the first time, probably India has pointed fingers at China. Over and above that, the critical minerals. There's a lot of issue about critical minerals, the way China is behaving with critical minerals. Well, it's in China's right to do what it wants to do because it's invested in critical minerals. It's up to China to export it to a place or not. But China has weaponized this issue of critical minerals. And China sees a threat from Quad on this. Why? And I'll show you a little later how things are playing out. China sees that India and Australia, and to a certain extent even USA, have adequate critical minerals. It's only a matter of time before they produce their own minerals, and then the Chinese dominance on rare earths and critical minerals will go. This is a worry for them. And they were getting a lot of raw material from us, which is now stopped. So there are issues in this. Then, of course, the major issue, like this has come out in Guancha, which is their hardcore tabloid Chinese, which is read by a whole lot of people, Mandarin-speaking people in China. It says Modi sent birthday wishes to Dalai Lama and China proposed to negotiate. Proposed to negotiate, the verbiage is wrong because the original thing is in Chinese. There's only a translation. And they have objected to it. And we'll read about it. This is what the Chinese ambassador to India had to put out on in Twitter, right? He says it has been noted that some Indian officials recently made some remarks regarding the reincarnation of Dalai Lama. Chinese government opposes any attempts by overseas organizations or individuals to interfere or dictate the reincarnation process. Xinjiang is an inalienable part of Chinese territory. Tibetan Buddhism traces its origin to China's Qinghai Tibet Plateau. The primary regions where Tibetan Buddhism is practiced are within China. The lineage of Dalai Lama took shape and evolved within China's Tibet region. All this. Okay. So he says no interference by any external forces will be allowed. The reincarnation and succession of the Dalai Lama is inherently an internal affair. So they're very sensitive and they're coming out with strong statements. The fact that Mr. Modi has greeted Dalai Lama has caught their headlines. The fact that Mr. Kiran Rijiju, or Minister of Parliamentary Affairs, has gone and personally been in Dharamshala and is also upset them. And they see a threat. And this threat is huge. Because unrest in Tibet upsets their calculus completely. Okay. And how India behaves from here depends on how China behaves and how India perceives its own story. But whatever the way things go, will it contribute to confrontation or, coexistence, armed, or friction? Will it cause friction? Obviously, these issues are causing friction. And I'm talking from a Chinese perspective. Okay. Then the issue of Pakistan. Now, China feels that India is using Op Sindoor, to slight Pakistan or to slight China, where our deputy chief has said that China is using Pakistan as a test laboratory to test their weapons and all that. And this has got a lot of press within China. And very firmly and frankly, there is a very clear move to motivate their people against all this. In fact, if you read any analysis of Op Sindoor in Chinese media, they talk of Pakistani victory, they talk of Chinese weapons functioning, overwhelming India, and India's useless response, and that India has been defeated. They gloss over what has happened to Pakistan. They gloss, and in fact, all pictures of terrorist, hideouts and all that, not those ones with those terrorist camps which we destroyed. They are depicted as schools that India destroyed Pakistani schools and public infrastructure. Mind you, this is not for international audience. They're building up within the nation. This has got a dangerous ramification. Tomorrow, if China decides that look, India is someone whom we have to teach India a lesson, because this teach India a lesson is still there in their minds. Then they need the populace with them. So they're already carrying out a propaganda within to build up their populace to think that India is its enemy. And it's a number 2 enemy after USA. And we should have no doubts about this in India or elsewhere. And what's more is galling for them is the fact that, this is just for our, what shall I say, weapon systems. And this for BrahMos. You see the list of countries which have asked for BrahMos. Almost everyone wants BrahMos. Everyone wants Akash. What does this do? It cuts Chinese influence and increases your export to the detriment of Chinese. So they are worried. And further, it has come out that their, or Atmanirbharta has succeeded. And this is what this article says. Now India thinks its Atmanirbharta has succeeded, but there are a whole lot of analysis which is done, which says no, useless. India is useless. These articles don't come out in international media. They come out in their media internally. There are a lot of contradictions in India's Atmanirbharta and it's fake. It all gets conflated with the Obsindur. It also gets conflated with the fact that the Rafales are useless. Now that India and France is trying to get a propaganda to say that Rafales are good, but actually they're not good. All that, and all this is catching their headlines. That China. We know that China has used its embassies so that they can point fingers at Rafale. And China has used its embassies all over the world to paint as if Pakistan has done a great job. It's all part of their cognitive warfare. But they have to sell it to their own people because outside it's not being sold. But this is a point of friction between India and China. Then there is this thing, the worry with them that India's global clout is going up. Their analysis, as per this headline, it is in doubt. It's the way they are putting it. But we know, you see the kind of reception which our Prime Minister got in BRICS. You see the kind of response we're getting in Quad. At this point of time, Trump has slapped, sanctions on everyone else and tariffs on everyone else. But India is not part of that. But that's a different story. If the FTA gets signed today or tomorrow, we'll discuss the implications of that a little later. Right? So this is, and what is galling for China is India's attitude in BRICS and Quad. Not sorry, BRICS and SCO. There are articles which I've read which says, look, India is a spoiler. It's a Trojan horse in BRICS and SCO. And especially they are worried about the SCO meeting which is to be held in August, September. They're worried that the Prime Minister won't come. If our Prime Minister doesn't, if there's no show there, it's a loss of face for China. In fact, Wang Yi is coming later this month or early part of August. He's a special representative to test waters and to mend fences. They will hype the fact that that Kailash Mansarovar Yatra has been restarted. They are pressurizing us to restart flights, which so far has not been done. Yeah, there are a lot of issues on the border. Why should you budge? And they are also worried about one major thing, that for the first time, all our ministries are acting in unison against China. Earlier, this is about 5-10 years back. Chinese chaps, when we had opened our doors to China to a large extent. Oh, the Chinese guys used to come to different ministries, talk to everyone. The coordination between ministries was not much. So they could exploit gaps between our ministries and outlooks. That's gone now. For a long time, there was a gap between our external affairs ministry and our defense ministry. Because anything to do with the border and anything to do with China was being dealt through the external affairs prism. For the first time in the history of India-China equations, from 2020 to now, to 2024, and even now, the whole story of India-China relationship has been dealt through the military prism. It's different. The results have been different. Attitudes have been different. But one thing which has happened is China has now suddenly realized that India is acting together. And that worries them. We are not divided anymore. And after what has happened in Pakistan, Op Sindoor, And the way Pakistan and China have reacted together, I think India will firm internally more. It has to happen. So this puts pressure on them. Look, they can no more play into a divided house. Okay. And the next thing they're worried is, look, India has grown and it's growing. Will it stop us from entering the global south? Because our approaches are different. Our approaches are completely different. Theirs is money backed, influence backed, coercion backed, debt traps. We don't do it that way. Many cases we've helped the global south without any aspirations of returns. And as India's economy rises and stature in world affairs rises, it is rising. Many of these countries in global south will start responding better to India. Even if they respond to India better by a notch, they will respond to China lesser by a notch. And if India gets some successes, it will be at China's expense. Remember, I always say India's growth is being perceived in China as at its expense. That's important. This is something which is now happened recently. Colombo, we're going to put up a dry dock out there. We're going to put up a port facility out. It's there. Musdown Docks has taken over. We have a stake in the Colombo dockyard, a major stake. Dockyard facility stake is putting your foot there in a big way, because you're going to make ships out there for export or for India. It is just one of your outsourced areas. And that is big. What Hamban Tota, after all their investment, could not achieve, this dry dock will, this dockyard will achieve. Why? Because India will employ locals in the dockyard. We will develop local capacities. We already got some leeway to operate one of those ports. So you are spreading. They're going to be part of our defense architecture. Whereas Hamban Tota, which they have on the 90-year-old lease or 99-year lease, some years have passed, many more are there, is not giving them benefit. And as days go by, right, that benefit will vanish, whatever the benefit they want to have. So it's of no use. So they are worried. You're making inroads. You don't have to make inroads everywhere. You make one odd case, one odd test case, and that will set off something. And that's setting off in Maldives already. Maybe the Sri Lanka model and the Maldives model will one day rub off on Myanmar, Afghanistan. Afghanistan also, it's rubbing off in a big way. So in regional dynamics, suddenly China is finding itself hemmed in. And the fact that you're giving weapons to Philippines, you're talking with Taiwan, you're talking with Indonesia, all these, it's worrying them. Indonesia especially, because Indonesia is going in for Rafales, 12 Rafales. They are looking at us for BrahMos. So China is shut out. Okay. So Indonesia is playing its games. Will do trade with China and will buy arms from the West and India and France. There's a problem there for China. The pressure on China is increasing. Once upon a time, we used to talk that the pressure on India is more, China is breathing down our neck. But these days, I find that they feel that India is breathing down their neck. And they feel that, look, how can India do that? We are the bigger economy, we are the bigger country, we want to do G2. Where is India coming from? India should stand in line in front of us. And that's not happening. If that doesn't happen, is there a case for us to teach India a lesson? So far, I have not seen this coming out, but it will come out any day. It will come out any day. Okay. Now, what is China doing about it? China has weaponized its trade and other issues already. They didn't want Chinese workers who are experienced to come to Chennai and teach Foxconn people in Chennai about their jobs and technology because they have that expertise. They said, no, we'll not come, we will not allow. So, what has happened? All the Chinese people in Foxconn in Chennai have been sent back. But Apple is not bothered. They're going ahead with the India route. And this is very important. Understand. India is today one of the important links in the semiconductor story. We are now into design of semiconductor. A new term. We are now a fabless semiconductor power. In fact, as per latest inputs, which I heard, uh, we have 20% control on design of uh, semiconductor chips, and some fabs are going to be set up. And the moment that happens, that's going to be at the expense of China. Why? We are not talking of the high-end chips. For normal purposes, you need the low-end chips. You need low-end designs. You need custom-made chips for various applications. The day we have that chips, you will see our hardware stories coming up because then you can make your processors you make already. And if you can design your own chips and you have a fab and you're heading towards Atmanirbharta in the bulk. Yeah, some high-end designs you still have to go back to TSMC and others, NVIDIA and all that. But already there is a movement on, and there are companies from Taiwan and USA who are coming to Bangalore for fabulous chip design. And our people are going there, working in their fabs and seeing it through. So there is something happening which is, antithetical to China. China is worried about this. And then they're coming out with such stories. India is in panic. Why? Because rare earth magnets, they've already weaponized it. I told you they've weaponized the workers in the Foxconn to go back. They've gone back. They're now weaponized rare earth magnets. And they said, look, if rare earth magnets are not given to India, the India's automobile industry will collapse. They are already weaponized it. They have already weaponized it, and we are now running around to see what is to be done. I'm sure something will come out of it. I'm not too worried about it. And even if we don't have, it's okay. A few EVs don't come. I'm not bothered because fundamentally, I'm against EVs because the EVs means lithium-ion batteries with dysprosium-based magnets, all that. This entire chain is not actually green. It's quite red, right? It is not environmentally effective. Yeah, it's different that it weans you away from fossil fuels. If that be so, we'll wait for 2 more years, 3 more years. Let's develop our own. They're squeezing us. And connected with the critical minerals issue, which I spoke to you about in Quad. So all these are there. They're all right putting. They're not giving you tunnel boring machines. They're not there, and they have restricted their EV manufacturers to set up plants in India. Why? They want full control of it. We are not prepared to give them full control of any manufacturing. You can invest, but the Indian partner will be, the majority partner, and that was the model which China used. We are using only the Chinese model. So this is right. These are all sources of friction. They're biting into us. And then they come out with this kind of propaganda. Have a look at it. Right. This they say, and this is on Twitter. Says India, shameless India imported 120 tons of rare earths from China and sold it to Europe. As if we are a dalal. Might be right. It might be a way of helping our European friends out or the US friends out. But they're depicting us the way they feel. And this is now coming out in the open. And then they're talking about our deal which we're dealing with, USA, the tariff deal. They highlight everything, which slows down the tariff. Like, for example, when Mr. Piyush Goyal said, we will not do anything against, our interests. That got hyped up in China. And, as if India and China, USA, there is a divide. There is a divide, I have no doubt. And we'll not bow down to what USA wants us to do. If that FTA comes out, it expected to come out in any day now, maybe today or tomorrow. After 9th is the deadline, right? We are already in 9th. It's early morning in USA. In fact, it's not early morning. It's late night, 8th night. By evening, it's morning. And tomorrow, something should happen, or not a day or two. But the fact is, they're hoping it doesn't go through, right? And they've done a whole lot of analysis on all this. So you find that things are happening, and then they're coming out with stories like US shift towards Pakistan unsettles India, and it shifts the South Asia balance. So the way they're putting it is, look, China, Pakistan is already in China's pocket. We'll allow Pakistan to go towards USA, and going with USA allows Pakistan more weight. If it allows more weight, it shifts the balance towards Pakistan, South Asia, which may where China will come in, and we will squeeze India. This is their calculations, and this is what comes out in all these articles. Then this thing, China wants this new club. Who's this new club? This is Bangladesh, Pakistan, and China. The guy in the center in this photo is Sun Weidong, who was the ambassador, China's ambassador to India. He's now a vice minister. He's got local knowledge, right? With his local knowledge, he is now snaring Bangladesh and Pakistan and trying to get something going. And it's not only this. It's not only this. You look at many of their articles these days. They're looking at equation with Russia, Iran, Afghanistan, China, Pakistan. Right. This is one. Then at times they come out Afghanistan, Pakistan, China. Now they have come out with Bangladesh and Pakistan and China. In some form or the other, they're trying to form some new grouping, which is to the detriment of India. So I've, over this period, about last 40 minutes, I've explained to you what are the issues China feels threatened, how they are replying to India. And as days go by, they find themselves that they don't have that influence with India. Op Sindoor has changed a lot of things. Let's not have any doubt about it. It has put doubts in China. It has put huge doubts in Pakistan. It has triggered a set of events in Pakistan which are still to unfold. Yesterday, all our Indian papers were, talking of a likely coup in Pakistan. After every event with India, there is something happening in Pakistan. So there might be a coup, which I yesterday discussed. Of course, it's in Hindi. Have a look at it. The Munir Doctrine. That's the heading. If you people have not seen, go into Gunner Shot, type in Munir Doctrine, and it'll come out. From deceiver to a dictator. So, are we looking at a dictatorship in Pakistan aided by China? All this is there, and plus the fact that now we are very clear that we are not fighting one adversary in Pakistan or China. Whenever we fight any one of them, we will be fighting more. Three. That's what our deputy chief also said, and I agree with him. And I like Rahul Singh the way he said. He was one of my, juniors. Then, well, ever since I remember, good guy, and he said the right thing, right? And I'm proud of him. So the point is that this relationship is not going, in the right direction for many reasons, right? So I'll go back to the first trajectory we saw. If you see this trajectory, okay, where are we now? We are definitely in this area of armed coexistence. We want to go towards peaceful coexistence so that let China do what it wants. But events are pushing us towards armed friction. Will that happen? If it happens, how do we respond? Do we go back, or how will USA respond? How will be the global politics? Remember the fact that Trump doesn't want to get involved in anything. He doesn't want India to get involved in anything which will upset the US apple cart. And this has been their grouse from long back. It's not new. Oh, these are the issues which are confronting us. We don't want a war. Definitely, we don't want a war. We want, peace. We need a peace dividend. We want to grow. We want to grow our own technology. And luckily, we've now come to the stage where our Atmanirbharta can really take off because there's a thinking in the atmosphere that no one will come to our help when the chips are down the next time. And now we have to see how will China put spokes in our whole story. They've already shown their hand by doing what they want. The good part is we are also showing our hand. How do you handle this Dalai Lama thing? Because that I think is a huge, danda in your hand. I go back to that Belfer Center, Harvard University analysis, which I read it in 2018 first. Very sensible. He says there might be parity of weapons, or superficially you might feel that China has got better weapons, better systems, better communication, everything. Across the LAC. But it is India which has the better equity. Because China, whether you like it or not, if push comes to a shove, they have to face with the internal situation. And with the way things are going, and this Dalai Lama business has started, reincarnation of His Holiness has started. They're not going to stop here. I mean, please understand, he's not yet passed away, he's there. And when he passes away, the search for the Dalai Lama will start. And that search won't go into Tibet. And the next Dalai Lama won't be in Tibet, because if he's in Tibet and he's not, approved by the Communist Party of China, he'll be whisked away like the Panchan Lama, so he'll be outside. But China will nominate a Dalai Lama immediately. They'll not wait. I'm sure they already have one guy ready. They'll say he's the guy. So on this side, you're going to have a gap of 5 to 10 years before, or 3-4 years before next Dalai Lama is in. But on that side, the Dalai Lama will already be in. And they'll get an older Dalai Lama. and put him, and he'll be controlled by the Chinese. He'll be a Chinese communist Dalai Lama. Will that be acceptable to us? No. They can't have it in limbo because that will put more unrest in Tibet. So this very factor, there are the combinations of the Dalai Lama factor will push us more towards confrontation and friction. Something will happen. It has to happen. The way I look at it, it'll. It might not happen tomorrow. It will not happen day after tomorrow. It might not happen 1 year hence. It might not happen 2 years hence. But definitely after that, things will happen. Something will happen, and we should be ready then. And especially considering the fact that China is internally in turmoil, so they will also like to externalize this whole story, right? So I thought, these are the issues which I thought I'll put across regarding India and China. Things are going south, and things are not in good shape. And with Pakistan, the Gulf is only widening. And if Pakistan becomes a dictatorship, a soft coup takes place, a constitutional coup takes place, and their equations become better, which are already there, or they see that, look, India is posing a threat beyond the normal to either of them, something is bound to happen. Whether it will come directly or indirectly is the issue. So I thought I'll put across all these to you, and I hope you like this video. If you like this video, press the like button. Also subscribe to Gunner Shot. And I must tell you a very strange thing which is happening, that the number of subscribers on Gunner Shot is reducing. I don't know why. I mean, out of the blue, uh, it appears as if people don't like Gunner Shot, and of course, if there are bots who are withdrawing, I'm happy. But I'd like all of you who have watched this video, if you're not part of Gunner Shot, subscribe. I'll be grateful to you. Okay, it at least boosts my morale, if nothing else. Okay, and I'm saying it with a smile. Huh?